Hello, everybody. This is Ken Tucker with Changescape Web. Today, we are joined by Cherie Summa with St. Louis Radon. Welcome, Cherie.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk to you because I think, radon is something that I don't think a lot of people know about, and obviously, there's some really critical issues when it comes to radon. So first of all, let's start out by just telling me a little bit about yourself and your company.
So, I am an engineer by trade. So my background is in geological engineering,
Wow.
and I have a master's degree in civil engineering. My career's kind of run the gamut. I started out by developing residential subdivisions. From there, I've been a construction project manager for heavy highway jobs. And this opportunity came about to purchase this business about 8 years ago. And I thought it would be a good fit with my engineering and construction background, but also something I could do to help families in our community. Because, like you said, Ken, a lot of people still are unaware of the dangers of radon. So, we do radon testing and mitigation in St. Louis and Illinois, St. Charles, and the surrounding counties.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So approximately, I mean, my understanding is that the St. Louis metro area is got a lot of issues with radon, and I don't know if that's true across the country. Can you talk about maybe how many houses are impacted, or the typical situation that you find in the St. Louis metro area?
Sure. So in the United States, 1 in 15 homes have elevated levels of radon. In our area in Missouri, it's 1 in 3. So 33% of homes have elevated levels. That's
Wow.
fairly significant. And when you get into Illinois, it's even higher. Over 40% of homes have elevated levels.
So why is that?
It's based on the geology.
Okay.
So radon comes from the breakdown of uranium.
Okay.
It's naturally occurring in rocks and soils underneath our homes. So yeah, it's just based on the geology.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. So can you talk a little bit more about what radon is and why homeowners should care about it and be aware of it?
Sure. It's a colorless, odorless gas.
Okay.
You can't see it, taste it, or smell it, but it can be present at dangerous levels in the home. So it's everywhere. It's outside, it's just diluted by fresh air outside. And the reason it's a concern is because it's the leading cause of lung cancer in non smokers. So it's fairly prevalent. Lung Radon induced lung cancer is the sixth leading cause of mortality in the United States.
Really? Wow. That's amazing. So, I mean, and this has nothing to do with, any of the issues you hear about like Coldwater Creek or anything like that. This is just naturally occurring based on the geology of our area, right?
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
And the only way to know if you have elevated levels of radon is to test for it. Because, like I said, you can't detect it. And there's no symptoms that go along with being exposed to high levels of radon. The only symptoms are the symptoms that you would get if you develop lung cancer from it, unfortunately.
Okay. Are there any other illnesses that or physical conditions that it also helps to cause?
There have been studies about some things like throat cancer, Alzheimer's, COPD, things like that. But I don't really, there's not enough studies that I like to talk about it, honestly.
Okay. All right. Let's take a little bit of a step back. You talked about, serving, St. Louis Metro and the Illinois side. Specifically, what areas do you serve? I mean, do you work in Jefferson County or Warren County, places like that?
We serve St. Charles County, Jefferson County, St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and also Illinois in the Metro East.
Okay. All right.
We go about a 100-mile radius.
Okay. Okay. Um, what's the best way for somebody to find out if they may have radon in their homes?
The best way, and honestly, the only way to know is to test.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, you can't rely on even your next door neighbor's test results. They may have elevated levels of radon and you may not. And it doesn't really matter. So we measure radon in picocuries per liter. If your radon is 4 picocuries per liter or higher, the EPA suggests that you install a mitigation system. But you could have levels as high as 20 or 100, and your next door neighbor may have lower levels. So you just need to do a radon test. Radon testing is fairly inexpensive. Typically, I'd say $130 to $200 for a test, but that's
Okay.
something that could potentially save your life, or somebody in your family, of course.
Yeah. So like, I'm just going to ask this question because I have no idea the answer, but is there anything that you could put into your house that alerts you to the fact that you might have high radon levels, like, carbon monoxide detectors?
Yes, that's a good question. There are consumer monitors that monitor continuously, just like a carbon monoxide detector. And, carbon monoxide is also considered one of those silent killers.
Right.
Interestingly enough, we're required now to have a carbon monoxide detector in our home, especially if they're during a real estate transaction. Carbon monoxide only kills about 500 people a year in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's great that we protect ourselves from that, but we don't have those safety measures. They're not required for radon yet, especially there are some requirements in certain states, but there are no requirements in Missouri right now.
When you say 1 in 3 homes in Missouri and even higher, percentage in Illinois have potential radon problems, my question is, why isn't it a requirement to build in a mitigation system when you build the house?
Well, it is in Illinois. It is a
It-
requirement.
Okay, all right,
It's been a requirement in Illinois since 2013. Missouri is a little bit behind the times when it comes to radon, and hopefully we will, get some legislation and a bill passed. I hope to see one in the next 2 or 3 years.
okay. So there is actually legislation that's been drafted and
It's in the process.
okay, all right. So how would that help impact your business?
It would. Well, when Illinois got, they had a Radon Awareness Act. They've actually been protecting their citizens since the late 1990s. The first bill they passed was to require radon mitigators and testers to be certified and
Okay,
trained to test for radon. But following that, they passed the Radon Awareness Act. When they passed that Radon Awareness Act, which basically required during a real estate transaction that you had to disclose if the house had been tested for radon, what the levels were, and if it had been mitigated. But more importantly, it required the seller to give the buyer an informational packet on what radon is, similar to what we have in Missouri for lead.
okay,
And business increased by 37% pretty much overnight once that got passed.
okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So, what you mentioned, the real estate transaction on the Missouri side. How does that work? I mean, is there anything that can be done or should be done, or what do realtors or home buyers or sellers need to know about radon as a part of the real estate transaction?
Well, as far as realtors go, I rely on them a lot, to make their buyers aware of what radon is, because as we talked about earlier, there's still people that they're just unaware, right?
Right.
Some of them never heard of radon. Some of them have heard of radon. They know it's dangerous, but they don't understand why. So I do a lot of education with realtors. I teach CE classes about 4 times a month lately. I do lunch and learns. I do things to educate educators, administrators at schools, people in PTAs, those types of groups.
Hmm.
So we do a lot of education, but it's really important if realtors are familiar with radon that they pass that along to their clients, because it's something that it's a good time in a real estate transaction to be educated on it. They can test for it during the home inspection period. Um, and it's just a great thing. And they can reach so many more customers than I could reach, so many more families and educate them.
Yeah. Do you work with home inspectors at all?
Excuse me?
Do you work with home inspectors at all?
Home inspectors, yes, absolutely. So home inspectors test for radon as well sometimes. We do a lot of testing for home inspectors too during the transaction. Or we can just do the testing, not as a one-off from the home inspection. It doesn't have to be included in the home inspection. In fact, it's great to have a radon professional doing the radon testing because they're more likely to be certified.
Is it a requirement to be certified in Missouri?
It's not there. Like I said, there are no barriers to entry for radon testing or radon mitigation in Missouri, unfortunately.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
you don't have to be trained. Um, if you are certified, of course, you have to be trained. You have to take continuing education classes every year, and you have to use certain equipment that is approved.
Hmm. Okay. So what about insurance? I mean, does insurance provide any benefit, for radon mitigation, or does it help to reduce your potential homeowner's insurance costs?
Typically, radon mitigation systems don't fall under your homeowner's insurance policy.
Okay.
If you have health savings accounts, you can typically use those to install a mitigation system.
Hmm.
Most people don't realize that, but they
Okay.
can since it's a health benefit.
That's an awesome tip.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, cool.
So if
So
you have $1,000 on your health savings plan at the end of the year,
yeah.
that's for radon.
Wow. So is that about the cost of a mitigation?
In Missouri, a typical radon mitigation system is 800 to 12 or $1,300.
Okay.
In other parts of the country, it's higher than that, but
Okay.
those are that's a ballpark for Missouri.
Okay. So if you're, let's say that you have a radon test done and it's good and you don't have a radon problem now, does that mean you're out of the woods, that you never have to worry about getting tested, or how frequently should you get tested for radon? I would assume since it's dealing with geology, things break down over a period of time, so it's not a static one, hey, I had it checked and I'm good, I don't have to worry about it again situation, right?
You're exactly right. You should test for radon every 2 years at a minimum. Whether you have a mitigation system installed or not, if you have a system installed, you want to make sure that it's continuing to work properly. You should also test for radon, of course, during any real estate transaction, but anytime you make alterations to your house.
Hmm.
So, alterations would be installing new windows, new doors, a new HVAC system. Anytime you install a sump or any kind of basement drainage system or drainage channel around the inside perimeter of your basement,
Wow.
because that can let radon in.
Okay.
Let's say the neighborhood behind you is doing some blasting. It might open up cracks that weren't there before. So
Wow.
the 2 years is kind of a catch-all because most people don't realize that those things that you might do to your home trigger you to test for radon.
Yeah.
A home addition, if you add an addition to your house, that
Wow.
would be another example of a time that you would need another test.
Okay. So when you install a mitigation system, is it common for people to get a, a monitor installed as well?
It's not as common as I would like it to be, but
Okay.
yes, you should have a consumer monitor like we talked about earlier, and we actually sell those. But if you don't have one, um, again, it's a good idea to test every 2 years. If you test for radon and your levels are below the 4.0, again, you should test every couple years, but radon can also be higher in the winter.
Okay.
So let's say you perform a test in the summer, and testing shouldn't be done all year round. But let's say you test in the summer and your radon levels are borderline. So to me, that's anything over 3. There's no magic number, right? So radon is radioactive. There's no safe level of radon. You want to be exposed to the lowest levels of radon over the shortest period of time. So let's say your radon levels are 3.5. I would recommend if you're testing in warmer months that you test again in December, January, February, because
Okay.
in Missouri, our winters are so long. You don't want to be exposed to high levels of radon half the year, right?
Right. Yeah. So, if you've gone through and done some energy efficiency work in your home and you've really focused on building an energy envelope, is that again? I know I realize things change over time, but is that a good measure to help potentially prevent radon? Again, assuming you're not making any additional changes.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No.
As a matter of fact, I would think maybe it makes it worse because now you've got more air that's contained within the home because you are being energy efficient. You're removing, the fresh air that's coming in,
Right.
that may have naturally came in through the windows and stuff.
Anything you do that's going to make your house tighter could increase your radon levels.
Okay. So we've lived in a crazy time in the real estate market here recently, where a lot of people have decided to forego getting a home inspection. I mean, just simply because it's been such a competitive market. Um, I assume that there are still things that people can do and can and should do if they didn't get an inspection or they even decided to waive the radon inspection. How would people move forward with that?
If they're in a real estate transaction, I would still test for radon, whether or not the buyer or whether or not the seller is going to pay for the mitigation system or not. It used to be up until about a year and a half ago, I would say 90% of sellers were paying for the radon mitigation system if the levels came back high because it was a health risk. They're not anymore. I would say it's probably more like 25%. However, I see that changing back before the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Um, but even if the seller's not going to pay, I mean, it's the least expensive home improvement that you can make to your house, a radon mitigation system, right?
Yeah.
It's something that's life-saving. There are other benefits to having a radon system. It pulls any kind of gas underneath your slab and vents it. You never know, there could be methane under there. You don't know what might be in the soil. It also pulls moisture from underneath your slab. So your basement's going to be drier. It might reduce some odors in your basement. So there's a lot of benefits, but I would if you know the seller's not going to pay for it, which you typically don't know that probably until the inspections period's over, I would test after you move in the house.
Okay.
But it's not really something that should only be done during a real estate transaction, right?
Right.
Um, it's just a good time to educate people.
Right. And it's
But
a natural
everyone
time,
should,
and it's kind of a natural time to do it if you have
right?
to.
It's a natural time to do it.
Yeah.
And if you buy a house that has elevated levels of radon and you don't mitigate it, you don't fix the problem, likely when you go to sell the house, that buyer is going to test and you're going to end up installing a radon mitigation system anyway. And then your family won't reap the benefits of breathing the fresh air.
Yeah.
We're in our homes so much more now than we used to be
Especially the
between
last few
working,
years.
yeah, between working from home, kids playing video games for countless hours in the basement. We work out inside at home. It's really critical that we know that we're breathing the cleanest air we can in our house.
Yeah. So are basements typically worse if you have a basement and you spend a lot of time down there, or does it really just not make that much difference?
It does make a difference. Radon levels are highest in the basement because radon is a heavy gas,
Okay.
but radon is everywhere in your house. If you have a house that's on a slab, so radon emanates from the ground, that's why it's higher in your basement. But if you live in a house that's on a slab, those high levels of radon are going to be in your main living space, right? And it's a common misconception that if you don't have a basement, you can't have a radon problem, but quite the opposite's true.
Okay. So can you describe a little bit about the mitigation process?
Sure. So it's a venting system, right? So we core drill a hole in the basement slab, excavate some material from underneath to create airflow. We put a Schedule 40 PVC pipe in it. We seal it airtight. That pipe goes to the outside of the house, typically through the band board, where we install an inline fan that creates the vacuum, which pulls the gas from underneath the slab. That pipe vents above the roof line. It's something that works 24 hours a day. It's never turned off because radon is constantly being produced.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, with you sharing the information about the health savings account, I mean, it seems to me like um, the next time you re-up for the level that you want to set aside in your account, you might as well just go ahead and get this taken care of. I mean, that just makes so much sense.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. It's what, a 25% discount?
yeah, wow. Okay, awesome. So Cherie, tell me a little bit about some of the struggles that your business has either dealt with and how you overcame those. On the flip side, what have you done really well in terms of marketing that's helped you grow your business?
During when COVID started, we were nervous as a company, right? Because that we're always in people's house. We're only in people's houses, right? We're in our
Right.
people's houses to test and to install the mitigation system. But it ended up being our last couple years have been our best years, and I think part of that is because so many people, since you're in your house, they're more aware of the air they're breathing in their house, and they're more concerned about that. So we've done really well the past couple years. The thing that we've done recently that has really improved our business is just really upping the education that we're providing in the St. Louis area. Like I said, I started teaching CE classes this year, continuing
Mm.
education for realtors, and it's made a significant difference because I'm reaching more realtors than ever before.
Yeah, yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, I do digital marketing for a living, but I do marketing overall. And what you're doing is you're getting in front of your ideal referral sources or one of your ideal referral sources, and giving them value in advance. And they're not even involved in the transaction. For you typically. I mean, that's that a realtor doesn't pay for this. It's other parties that are paying for your services. So they truly are a referral source, and that's brilliant. I mean, we always try to look for those levers that you can take advantage of that is going to get you the most bang for the buck. And I think you've come across one of the very best for sure.
Absolutely. And in the continuing education classes, of course, you have their undivided attention
Right.
for 3 hours.
Yeah. Do you do any virtual training or any recorded training?
I do.
Okay.
I haven't in probably 6 months, but
Okay.
during COVID, I did quite a bit.
Okay.
I also do lunch and learns, office meetings. Um, outside of the real estate world, we talk to HOAs, groups like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of the amplification, where you're talking to the people who get you in front of all of the other people that you need to be reaching. So,
absolutely right.
yeah, absolutely. Brilliant stuff. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, anything else that you can think of that you want to share today?
If I could tell the listeners anything, it's radon-induced lung cancer is preventable, right? The
Right.
only way to know that you have elevated levels of radon is to test.
Yeah.
And it's something that can be life-saving. It's more dangerous than most people think, but like I said, it's preventable. So
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, with there are so many reasons why we're spending more time in our homes than we have. Whether you decided to work from home, change careers, you have the ability and the flexibility to do that. Um, you know, it's just it's a really important thing to do. So thank you so much for sharing the wonderful information you have. And I love the tip about the health savings account. I hope everybody heard that and takes serious action on that, because that's awesome.
I know when I had one, I didn't know that.
I'm glad you shared that. That's a great idea. So, and it's a shame. I would encourage everybody also to help just promote that this is a real critical issue in the St. Louis metro area. And if you do ever talk with anybody in the legislature, you ought to talk to them about getting Missouri to step up and get better laws and regulations in place.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Cherie, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Goodbye.